Well, let's bring in political analyst Douglas Yates into the conversation. Douglas, you also are the author of a Historical Dictionary of Gabon, so you're very familiar with the country. We heard just at the end of that package, that report saying that this could be tailor-made for Nguema to stay in power. How do you respond to that?
Yes, I mean, clearly this was, first of all, a sounding board for him to see if he has legitimacy still over a year after he staged the coup. And the relatively decent turnout and the large number of people who voted yes indicates that not only have they accepted a new constitution, but they're probably going to vote for him in August.
So a very strong mandate.
Yes, and it was a gamble. He's taken many gambles. What makes this coup so unusual at the time is, unlike the other coup plotters who in the Sahel have said, we're going to hold on to power and we're going to use Russia as our military ally, we're never returning to civilian rule, he's played the game by the rules. He said, this is a transition, I'm going to restore civilian rule. He did a long dialogue this spring with civil society, which produced 1,000 recommendations. Most of those were incorporated into this, and he held a referendum. By all indications, it was a fair and free referendum. Things like in Libreville, the capital, where there were many members of the former regime who were unhappy, about 20% voted no. This wasn't an Equato-Guinean referendum.
Does that then give basically an indication of how to be a junta?
Yes. You know, he's kept his alliances. He's played his cards very well with the United States, for example, and the West. He's indicated that he's going to keep Gabon in the Western camp. He's had talks with international lenders, including private lenders who just came out this week to Gabon. He's worked with members of civil society. He's managed to integrate former members of the regime who had been opposed to Ali Bongo, but who had government competence. So far, he's played all his cards excellently.
And now looking forward, if you take into account what this referendum has basically been about and the changes to the constitution, what does that give in terms of a perspective? What can we expect basically to securitize the fact that there won't be what we've seen before in terms of political dynasties?
Well, some of the articles in this now approved referendum would prevent, for example, his children from succeeding him in power. It prevents family members from succeeding rulers. Also, getting rid of the prime ministership will make this a clear presidential regime, which will not necessarily make the legislature secondary, but will mean there's no more confusion where a president can blame a prime minister and change his prime minister like changing a shirt. There'll be a clear responsibility focused on Nguema. Also, it prevents members of the Bongo dynasty from returning to power, not only Noureddin Bongo, who many suspect is still under house arrest, but Omar Dennis Bongo Jr., the grandson of Denis Sassou Nguesso, might also be excluded for not having two Gabonese parents. The Gabonite in this case is not like Ivoirite. It's really something designed to keep the Bongo dynasty out. They're fabulously rich. They're well connected. If he's not careful, they could stage a counter coup.
Then if we look at where Gabon sits in terms of its relations to the outside world, under this administration and looking ahead now with this new constitution, can we expect a independent Gabon? Can we expect a country which moves more towards the West? How do we envisage it?
Yeah, so Gabon is a country that has long been an ally of the West. It votes with the West in international forum. It works on things like the Congo Rainforest Basin Initiative. It signed the Paris Accords for climate change. And it didn't accept having a Chinese military base established there. These were big deals in global geopolitics. Gabon right now is in a partnership with the state of West Virginia National Guard to develop its security, and he sent messages to Washington, to France, to NATO partners that Gabon remains in the Western camp at a time when other military leaders are accepting the temptation of Russia.
And a final note, do we expect a expect a peaceful transition of power?
Yes. There's every indication. This was the man in particular who had done the dirty work for the Bongo regime. In the previous elections, it was the Republican Guard who did the violence on protesters. The fact that he refused this time to repeat that scenario indicates that this will be a peaceful transition to power. A great surprise would be, imagine if he doesn't run.
Oh, I don't know. It would quite go against the grain, certainly. Douglas, thank you so much for your insights, as always. Douglas Yates there on that referendum in Gabon.